Let's return to Ukraine and that massive Russian offensive in the northeast region around Kharkiv, an offensive that's adding to anxieties in the country. The fighting there is reported to have become very intense in the last few days, with Russian news sources saying their troops have entered the border town of Vovchansk, just 70 kilometers or so from Ukraine's second biggest city of Kharkiv. They said there was fighting on the streets there with civilians fleeing the area. It's all happening as the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Ukraine today after US military funding was held up by the American Congress for months. Mr. Blinken said US weaponry is coming soon, but will it be soon enough? Well, for his assessment of the Russian offensive in particular and the war in Ukraine in general, I'm joined now on the line from Washington by the US military analyst Doug Brooks. Mr. Brooks, thank you very much indeed for joining us. How much of a crucial difference will the arrival of this American weaponry make to Ukraine's war effort?
Could make a pretty big difference. Now, they already have some ammunition and other things arriving at this point, but most of it will be coming over the year. In the meantime, I think what we're seeing the Russians realize is they need to move quickly to be able to basically do as much as they can before all this ammunition and new weaponry arrives.
Well, I mean, the reason I ask that is, as you know, the speed of the arrival of this American weaponry, and you talked about that just now, is crucial for Ukraine, because while it was a coup for Kyiv, for the $61 billion military aid package to finally be unlocked in Washington after months of disagreement, I mean, it's now got to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. The U.S. Congress, mainly led by the pro-Trump Republicans, held on to this whole bill for 6 months, or held it up, I should say. There are some people in Congress who are anti, or let's say pro-Putin or pro-Russia. But the bigger issue is just a small number of Republicans that are Trump supporters that are really basically holding enough votes to make it really difficult for anything to move through the House. So yeah, this whole package has been held up for 6 months, and in the meantime, the Ukrainians have been pushed very hard. They've run very low on ammunition, on anti-missile missiles, and other things. And this is being we're seeing, I think, the results now. It was tragic, this whole delay.
And we heard President Zelensky's request for Patriot batteries earlier. The US hasn't given any more Patriot batteries, and Mr. Zelensky has actually requested 7 for the whole of Ukraine and 2 specifically for the Kharkiv region, where this new Russian offensive is underway with the Russians. Is he going to get it?
So Europe has already been put together some of these Patriots, and so there should be some arriving. Their use in Kharkiv may be somewhat limited because Kharkiv is so close to the border that the response time is very short, and the batteries themselves would be at risk. But it would definitely be helpful to have more Patriot batteries. And as we can see, the Russians are using some larger weapons, glide bombs and things like that, where they really do need to have some sort of capability of countering these things. So yeah, it would be great to get those Patriot batteries in. I don't think they're going to arrive as quickly as they need to. But as soon as they get them, I mean, they will be put to use.
And talking about the Russians, from what we're hearing at the moment, there are more than 30,000 Russian troops thought to be part of this cross-border incursion into the Kharkiv region. I mean, that suggests that Russia's ambitions are broadening and its confidence is increasing.
There's a bit of that. You're right. What we're seeing, or what we think we're seeing now, is this push from the north, from Russia directly into Ukraine, is basically forcing the Ukrainians to split their forces and try and cover more fronts. And already they're outnumbered, and currently, because they haven't received all their ammunition, they don't have enough ammunition. So it's a real problem. The Russians are pushing hard right now. and pushing on all fronts. They're taking enormous casualties. I mean, really, I don't think there are many countries in the world that could accept that kind of casualty rate. But the Russians are doing it right now, and it's really pushing the Ukrainians very hard. They're very much on their back foot.
Well, I mean, we're hearing that Russia has captured another Ukrainian village in the Kharkiv region where it launched that sudden assault we're talking about last Friday. Around 30 villages there are now reported to be coming under continuous attack from Russian troops. What is your assessment of what is actually going on there?
So there's been some criticism of the Ukrainian military leadership that they had not fortified the north as much as they needed to. And so the Russians have actually made some ground, 7 or 8 miles, I think, into Ukraine. I mean, on the larger scale, it's still not a huge distance into Ukraine, but they're taking a lot of villages fairly quickly. And so, yeah, this is a pretty dire situation for the Ukrainians right now, and they have to hold out as long as they can until more ammunition shows up.
Well, absolutely. And beyond, that specific area, there's been concerns expressed around this war escalating, especially around NATO weaponry. I mean, there's been a debate as to whether NATO weaponry should be used on Russian soil, but by the Ukrainians. There seems to be a bit of a grey area about that, with some saying it shouldn't be ruled out and others saying it should. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we should basically be freeing the Ukrainians up to fight this war. They have not asked any other country to put their soldiers on the front lines. It's all Ukrainians on the front lines. We are helping them with weaponry, and they are essentially fighting a strategic foe of the free world. I think there needs to be the flexibility for the Ukrainian military and leadership to use the weapons as they need to. I mean, we can't simply allow the Russians to have military buildups, and just be surprised when all of a sudden these attacks are effective. So I think there needs to be a lot of flexibility on that. The Russians complain a lot, and I think they've more than 60 times Russian officials have said, "Oh, we're going to go nuclear if this or that happens, or if NATO supports Ukraine or whatever." They're not going to do that, and right now they are very afraid, I think, of these new weapons coming in from the United States and Europe.
Doug, thank you very much indeed. We always appreciate your analysis. Doug Brooks is a U.S. military analyst, and he was talking to me there on the line from Washington.